What's going on, everybody? This is dkdynamite, and today we're going to be talking about the Black Ops 6 campaign, the brand new Safehouse, and just how there's a bit of controversy going around about the game possibly being similar to Modern Warfare 3. Definitely stay tuned. But before we jump into that, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, drop a like, and it's been a crazy last couple of days with so many videos going up here on the channel. Sincerely thank all you guys for the immense support here on the YouTube channel, over on detonated.com. We've had plenty of brand new articles also going up on the site, and of course, lots of tweets going up every hour on Detonated's Twitter. With that being said, though, I want to start off by saying that Treyarch is actually really happy that Raven is doing the campaign yet again this year for Black Ops 6. They did it for Cold War, which to me was really clutch because Cold War seemed to have a pretty tight development schedule considering it wasn't originally Treyarch's game to begin with, at least according to rumors from Kotaku and other media outlets. When I was over at Treyarch Studios last week, I was told by some developers that they were really happy Raven actually stepped onto this project because I'm sure it gives Treyarch a lot of extra time to go ahead and work just on multiplayer and zombies, just as they did over in Cold War. Not to say that Treyarch isn't working at all on campaign, they're certainly helping out, as are many other studios, but I think that's definitely weight lifted off their shoulders to ensure that they could put that time into more of the online experiences. So I saw a couple of complaints in regards to the confirmation that an internet connection is constantly required to play every experience in Black Ops 6. Just to clarify, you need a continuous internet connection to play any game mode, including campaign. This is according to Activision now, but if you're on console, campaign can be played without a premium subscription, such as Game Pass Core, which is like Xbox Live, or PlayStation Plus. This is a big change that I know a lot of folks aren't really happy with, especially when you get into a conversation about game preservation. We'll get more into that on the podcast tomorrow, but when it comes to an internet connection being required to play campaign, I know it's frustrating that everybody out there in the world has the best internet connection or one at all. I totally get this, but there's clearly a reason why they're going down this route. I'm not a dev or an engineer or a higher up at corporate that can make these decisions, but I know it's something that may begin to impact more games than just Call of Duty, especially over the next couple of years as we enter a new generation of console and a new generation for the gaming industry altogether. Now, with that clarification out the way, I also wanted to go into this package, which is actually pretty relevant to this video. As you guys can see, once I got back home from LA after visiting Treyarch, managed to see this really cool box just sitting at my doorstep, and I'm like, wait a second, what could this be? It's a massive package that has a jumpsuit in it. Yes, a prison jumpsuit with the new Cerberus logo on it and the Truth Lies on the back. It's really damn sweet and definitely gonna be my Halloween costume this year. But also in this package, there is a classified CIA document that does contain an exact image that I believe was over in Warzone through the new bunker, and that is the fact that Adler is the enemy of the states. We have his full bio here on this piece of paper. I think it was the first time we were able to learn about Adler's true age and some other details about his persona, which is pretty cool. So we got this piece of paper in here, some other images, and what appears to be a map of the safe house that we're going to be using inside of the Black Ops 6 campaign. So I think it's pretty cool that throughout various pieces of marketing and through packages like this, we're going to be getting some really important teasers to help set up the narrative and just the structure of Black Ops 6 altogether. But yes, I'm also aware that we still don't have a video on channel 4 on the truthlies.com. Maybe that's being saved for later this summer, or maybe they just forgot about it. However, I think there is a chance that we still get some decent marketing on that site or just on Call of Duty social channels before the COD Next event at the very end of August. So if you're wondering what's going on with the safe house, right, they sent me a map in the mail of the safe house itself, and they actually went in depth with the safe house over at the pre-briefing at Treyarch Studios and again in the direct event that Xbox was live streaming. So what's really important to note is that in the Black Ops 6 campaign, you don't have access to any loadouts, right? You can't customize a loadout and bring it into your next game. That's not how the campaign works. However, throughout each mission of the campaign, you'll be able to collect various resources. Think of a free in-game currency that I guess you could just go ahead and collect in each mission, or it'll just be different types of resources in each mission, but you can take these resources into a safe house in between each campaign level to upgrade your gear. Now, it wasn't clarified or really explained to us even behind the scenes how this is going to work. I mean, you can upgrade your gear in the sense of, you know, your character, maybe your outfit. I'm assuming when it comes to the equipment you can bring in-game, but without a loadout system, I'm curious what this would mean, right? Can you upgrade weaponry that you'll then find in the environment so you don't have any loadouts? I'm really interested in how this is going to work, but at the very least, there's a level of replayability with the fact that you can upgrade the items that you use, and that could really enhance your gameplay if you want to go ahead and, let's say, replay some levels one day. But the safe house is honestly something really exciting that really does boost replayability in a way that, let's say, MWIII just couldn't. I mean, this allows us to go ahead and learn more about our allies through dialogue trees, as they said. You could also just choose to explore the old mansion, which is actually pretty big, judging off of the map they actually sent me. And then there's, of course, an evidence board to select new missions. We're going to circle back to this in a little bit because there might be an indicator as to how how many missions there are going to be. But here's what I'm getting at, right? The amount of time it took to beat the Modern Warfare 3 campaign became very controversial last year, right? Which IGN and many other game review sites really threw shade at, right? It got really piss poor reviews because of how short the campaign ended up being. But thinking about the depth Black Ops 6's campaign is about to have on top of this Safehouse, I think it's honestly going to be a much longer campaign than we're all anticipating, and probably a lot longer than the Cold War one. We'll also circle back to that topic in a second, but here's something really important that was pointed out over at Treyarch. It's the fact that they've doubled down on gameplay variety. This was mentioned a little bit in the Direct event, but I want to give you guys some more context from what I learned. So they gave us some examples, right? We'll be seeing big combat in the Gulf War. We're going to see a heist-like mission in a casino. There's going to be stealth-type gameplay being used behind enemy lines, and there's also going to be surprise-type missions that really give the game that Black Ops feel, and that's missions similar to Break On Through, as we saw over in Cold War. They mentioned how we're going to be going to Iraq, Washington, D.C., northern Russia, and there's going to be unique visual identity in each mission that we have. But here's a big takeaway that I want you guys to remember. It's that within many missions, keyword is many, players have a variety of options for how to complete objectives, and they could choose each objective in the order that they want. So what does that sound like upon first glance? That sounds like Desperate Measures, a mission that was really successful in Cold War and is amongst one of, I think, the top Call of Duty campaign missions of all time. I also love Break On Through for this very reason, you know, having that element of choice, which can impact how the mission then plays out. Desperate Measures was a bit more linear in the sense that you had a bunch of options of where you wanted to go in the KGB building, but then no matter what choices you made, you ended up leading up to a linear part of the mission to close everything out, whereas Break On Through was a bit different, where you had a lot of options to make, which actually impacted the canon of the story later on. Now, to the information that we have as of right now from Treyarch, it looks like Black Ops 6 won't have multiple endings. Again, take that with a grain of salt, because they could have just been concealing some secrets and don't want us to know that information right now, but it seems like you'll be able to, like Desperate Measures, make choices in the mission that honestly create replayability for the mission itself, but we'll still get to the same canon at the very end of the mission. But over at the studio, we managed to see gameplay of what appeared to be an open combat-like experience, similar to missions that we saw in Modern Warfare 3, and in the mission, you were guided by Helen Park, you were over in Iraq doing a raid. It was pretty damn cool and a very expansive mission, but this has since created some controversy after content creators talked about the mission, after some details did surface about how open combat is going to work. Just to clarify, right, the entire campaign isn't just linear or isn't just open combat. It's, like I said before, it is built on a variety of different types of gameplay, but I think people have taken things a bit out of proportion when they've heard some of the quotes that I went over or when they watched the Direct. A lot of people seem to think that there's going to be a lot of open combat type experiences as we saw in Modern Warfare 3. Here's what I'll say about that, right? Open combat as a concept is great, right? The issue is the way it was executed in Modern Warfare 3 was almost like we were just playing a bunch of Spec Ops missions instead of a traditional campaign. Now, if the missions give you a reason to go back and replay them, then I feel like it's warranted to give the mission an open combat-like identity. And I think the issue with MW2 and 3, so to speak, is that neither of these games really had many Easter eggs. MW3, I don't think, had even one, whereas Modern Warfare 2 might have had a handful, like the crossbow and a safe, a couple of cool things that I covered, but MW3 really didn't have any Easter eggs. And you know, every Treyarch campaign has. Every Black Ops campaign has had an Easter egg, or several that you can find throughout many missions. So you can bet that if you're going to have an open combat-like experience in Black Ops 6 for at least 1 or 2 missions, you bet they're going to sprinkle those missions with plenty of things you can discover and plenty of reasons to go back and then replay those missions later because of what you found. Now, it was heavily implied there's at least a mission or two that's like that within Black Ops 6, but it does seem like a majority of the campaign is similar to Desperate Measures and maybe a tad bit of Break On Through, in the sense that it's a linear experience from start to finish, but there's choices in between that you can feel free to choose from, but you're still going to get to the same result. Now, when asking Treyarch about how similar this campaign would be to, let's say, MW3, they didn't want to go into too many details other than the fact that they've had a lot of time to cook these ideas. I think people often hear certain buzzwords or terms like open combat, like open world, and automatically assume the worst when the context about all of this is actually really important. So realistically, being afraid that this game is going to be too similar to MW3 just really isn't warranted. They clarified heavily in the pre-brief when I was at Treyarch and a bit during the Direct that there is huge gameplay variety. Every mission will technically feel different, but several missions offer you the element of choice, which is one of the strongest parts of a game like Black Ops Cold War, and nobody had any complaints about a mission like Desperate Measures, for example. So I think it's all about the execution, not necessarily the concept. Now, during the Direct, we actually got to see a nice glimpse of the evidence board in the Safehouse. There appears to be about 16-ish bulletin points on the evidence board, which folks out there are speculating to be the actual amount of campaign missions we're gonna have in Black Ops 6. So if you count all 16 and you look at where these actually are on a map, you could see many of these take place over in Europe, but again, we know there's at least one mission that takes place in Washington, D.C. We know not every mission will take place over in Europe, but with this information in mind, we may get upwards of about 16 missions, let alone the replayability from actually having the Safehouse to go explore in between each mission, to upgrade our gear, to just talk to other characters, kind of similar to Cold War. This is about to be a pretty lengthy campaign, at least from what I can tell, and when asking Treyarch how long the campaign is, I know the press also asked this question, they just compared it to a traditional campaign, and we'll get back to this in a second, but don't take these bulletin points for certain. This is just the community being the community and saying, hey, these are the Easter eggs that we were able to find from the direct event, and here's what they could mean, right? Take that as you will, but I think either way, with the extra years development that have gone into Black Ops 6 in comparison to a game like Cold War, we're bound to have a longer and more in-depth campaign than we've likely gotten in a while. Now, when it comes to the length of the campaign itself, they didn't come out and flat out say, oh yeah, the game's about 7, 8, 9 hours. They didn't give us any specific amount of time like that, but they've compared it to classic campaigns, which I think by default makes it longer than what we got in Modern Warfare 3 last year, and probably a lot longer than Cold War, especially when you consider the fact that Cold War didn't have as many missions as I think the game deserved, but it had a reasonable amount of missions that I think really progressed the narrative that ended up being very strong, even when looking at where it went in post-launch. I know somebody at Treyarch even went ahead and said that when they go out and make a campaign, they're not looking to just hit a certain hour or a certain amount of missions that will dictate how the campaign's gonna work. They just have a story they want to tell and will build the strongest possible missions to tell that story, regardless of how many missions that consist of. So while some folks might consider that a PR answer, and some folks will say, oh, well, MW3 had a bunch of open combat missions to prolong the campaign because there wasn't enough time to create as many linear missions, while you can go ahead and think that, I think for a game like Black Ops 6 that has had several more years under its belt than a game like MW3, you can bet they really mapped out a strong story, and they mapped out exactly what missions they need to put into the game to tell that story in the best way possible. And I think you're able to tell the best story in a game like Black Ops 6 when you again have that gameplay variety when it comes to stealth, when it comes to open combat, when it comes to linear gameplay, when it comes to psycho break on through, branching realities, branching psycho mindfuckery. I think when you have all of that in a single campaign alone with that variety in place, I think at that point, folks out there may not like one mission over another, but there's so many different ones to choose from that there's still a lot of value to take away from the single player. But that is about it. This has been dkdynamite. Leave our thoughts down below in the comment section. What are your thoughts on the Black Ops 6 campaign and everything we know so far? How you feeling about the Safehouse? And how you feeling about how this game sounds so far compared to a game like Modern Warfare 3 with its open combat? Really hope you've enjoyed, and peace out, everybody.